Good morning, Dayle here from Virbac Animal Health. I have Dr Hensie Lategan here with us. He's going to just give us a reminder on the best practices of dosing and injecting your animals to ensure that we get the best out of whatever remedy we are using. So over to Hensie.
Okay, thanks Dayle. Let's get started. Good morning. This morning we're going to try and show you how to safely and effectively dose your sheep with a remedy against parasites or trace elements or whatever. The first thing to remember when dosing sheep is you've got to use the correct dosage. For that you need the weight of the sheep. When we dose for parasites, we dose according to the heaviest sheep. These sheep here varies from about 80 to 75 kilos. So we're going to set our dose gun at 80 kilos at the highest. If there are great variation in the weights, then rather use either 2 syringes or separate the flock into smaller and bigger use, and again dose according to the heaviest one. Before you start, you've got to know the dosage, you've got to know the withdrawal time, and you've got to know that you're using the right product for the right occasion. And for that we have to read the instructions first to make sure that you give the correct amount, keep to the withdrawal time and so forth. Before we start, we also have to make sure that our equipment is in good working order, that it's clean, that there's no rough edges or places on the nozzle in front. That is one of the reasons why we sometimes get injuries in the throat with subsequent infection, and it sometimes bump against other stuff. It sometimes even the teeth may cause abrasions here. So always make sure it's smooth. If not, just smooth it off with very fine sandpaper. Also make sure that it is well calibrated. Make sure that there's no air bubbles in the front. And so you always hold the syringe upwards to do that. And you push until you get the remedy out. And you make sure that there are no air bubbles. Because these sheep are 80 and the syringe can't do that in one go, we've set this to 8 mils. So we give each sheep a double dose or 2 doses of 8 mils to get to the right dosage. To make sure it still gives the measured dose, I just use an old 20 ml syringe, put the block needle at the bottom or melt it close with a lighter and just do the first dose in here and see if it is actually 8 mils, and there we are at 8 mils. And also check for leakages. Sometimes this washer here or plunger starts leaking. It leaks at one of the areas where you put the nozzle in or at the back. So just do a pressure test. Close the nozzle and squeeze as hard as you can. And if there's no backflush or stuff leaking out, then you know your dose gun is still in fine working order. Before we start dosing, there's a few things to keep in mind. The first is never to dose sheep that have been driven for a distance and are still panting. Rather let them settle a bit in the kraal before you start. If they're panting, they may inhale some of the remedy and that may lead to pneumonia. Secondly, when you dose, never pull the sheep's head too far over backwards. Then they can't swallow. That can also cause some of the drug to run into the lungs and cause pneumonia. And thirdly, never use force when you dose a sheep. We sometimes see dosing injuries where either the sheep jumped or the guy was inexperienced and he used too much force or was in a hurry. Remember, it's not a race. You've got to do it properly. He was in a hurry and he used too much force, and you can actually damage the blood vessels in the back of the throat. And that may either lead to infection and you get this huge swelling under the throat, or it may lead to bleeding and they may actually bleed to death. So always work gently. And when you do it, you pick the head up, not too high, just at a nice angle. Slip the nozzle in just in front of the molars so that they don't bite down on the nozzle, and push it gently over the tongue and then squirt the drench right at the back of the throat. We don't want to dose them on the tongue or in front of the tongue or beside on the side of the tongue. We want to dose them at the back of the tongue. And then when you've drenched them, then hold the head for a few seconds. Don't drop it too quickly. If you drop it too quickly, some of the remedy may run out and they won't get the correct dose. Now we're going to demonstrate how to safely dose the sheep. When they're in a crush like this where they can move around, it's always a good idea to keep a crane handy and just mark the ones that's already dosed, so you don't dose some of them twice and some not at all. To do the actual drenching, just grab them behind the head. We don't pull the head too far backwards, otherwise they can't swallow. And then we just gently go in the side of the mouth here, just in front of the molars, so you don't damage the tip. And you go completely over the tongue into the back of the throat. And because this one is a heavy sheep, we're going to give it 2 doses, and then you're going to hold the head for a while and then drop it.